Let me know when you're ready and we'll call the public meeting to order. Okay, I'd like to call the public meeting to order. And to begin with, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 6 acquisition of real estate or economic development.
Move to go into executive session as described.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor? All right. And we will now shut down the Zoom, in executive session. Oh, Mark. Sorry, I'll do
start and I'm new, so it's now being applied.
All right.
They decided to leave it until March because of the weather.
I was reading those emails and I was getting kind of confused
I think that was the fall.
on it. That's good.
But the people doing the mathematics survey lucked out. It was like
Yeah.
55 degrees and flat calm that day. They're out there sunbathing, but they got their work done. Yeah.
It would have been nice to do it in August in retrospect, but
Is Josh coming tonight? Josh is out sick. Josh will not be here. So when you're ready, we'll be ready to start. Just let me know. Good evening.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Well,
Okay. Let's call the meeting to order at 6:01 PM. First item on the agenda was an executive session that we just finished. Second item on the agenda is item 3, public comments for items not on the agenda for discussion, not action. Any such public comments? Nope, nope. All right. Moving along to town reports, town administrator.
all right, so the reports, there's a little misprint to it. So the TA report, I didn't have anything typed up at the moment. There are a few things that I can verbally just briefly update you on. So the first thing is the town renovation, as it was mentioned last time, it is done. Our scheduled date for the furniture to be delivered to the island and installed is on March 8th. So after that, the office will be back into somewhat normal functioning state. The second thing is the audit. So I did receive 2 days ago, I believe it was, the draft. They were missing one part of a school section, and so I provided that information to them once I've received it from the for them, forwarded to them, and so I would anticipate that this week the finalized thing will come our direction, and then we will share that with you. Looking at it, really briefly, it does look like we have a number to work with to start out with for the undesignated fund balance, so we at least have some of those numbers to work, but I think the audit will be available in time when we really start into the depths of the bottom of the budget. The third thing is road closures. I had touch base with Public Works. I will most likely tomorrow put something online on the town website, send out a text alert. The plan is to have the road closed for heavy weights starting March 6th. So it gives a 2 weeks notice in advance for companies to get things in order and go until April 15th. And we'll make sure to put something in saying that in the chance that the roads stay frozen longer or they thaw out quicker, we'll let the public know as soon as we're able to if there's any anticipated changes. So, any questions so far?
Mark.
Do we inform our main barge carrier of the road closing dates?
Yes, Public Works gives them a call. So today Chuck said he'll give the barge company a call so they're aware of it.
Thank you.
Next thing is Board of Adjustment Appeals have scheduled a date for March 12th to continue on the hearing that was not finished a couple of weeks ago. That meeting will take place entirely on Zoom. And I will be at that meeting to make sure that they have the technical support that they need to be able to conduct the meeting virtually. So that will be posted in the next postings.
Is that 5 PM again, like the usual, you know?
I believe it's at 5:30, but I have to double check on the agenda.
Okay, thanks.
Agenda said
No.
No,
I forgot. Email.
so.
Thanks.
And then the last thing that I have is just kind of to gauge the board's, thoughts about, the monthly town reports. So, when I first started as the TA first time around, we had, talked to all the departments and agreed that on the first meeting of the month, monthly reports would be presented from the different departments. And so that was pretty consistent, but it really staggered off the last couple of months. And so before I reach out to all the individual departments, and expect that that is to be reinstated, I don't know if the board, wanted it kind of in the same, process, or if there's maybe suggestions of how they could be improved for the information that they're looking. And so, my goal is to have something from, each department, so the public and the board has an understanding of, from the department of what's going on, but I would like some input from the board to see what would be, something that they're looking for on a monthly basis before I reach out.
Sure.
I mean, I really like the monthly reports because it does give us an idea of what's going on. I think at some point we could maybe come up with a format. I've seen some other towns that sort of, unexpected items, things that are planned for the future, but I think you could work that out with the departments. It doesn't need to be a board thing. I think one thing that I think it's been great having the code enforcement officer report. I would just ask that maybe the code enforcement officer also send a list of permits issued, so it used to be on the website, maybe it is again, but I think just adding that list of permits, kind of that way we have it, we look at it and we.
Permits issued in that time period?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, or maybe the permits issued in 2024 and just keep adding to it monthly, whatever makes sense. But when, I think actually having the permit list with the location and what it's for is better than just saying, 5 building permits, 2 electrical permits, that's kind of meaningless to me. So I think having the actual summary would be better.
So in line with the code enforcement officer discussion, I've been sitting in, weekly, through the iWorks training. I really haven't been doing most of the training at all, but it's just for another person to know the process. Tammy has been working really hard to provide all of the information that is needed, and the goal is she's actually started going in the permits that she's received in the current calendar year, putting it into it.
Yep.
And so the goal is to have that be up and running, when the busy season picks up. And so I think that is going to be an area where, the public would be able to, from my understanding, see, or we'd be able to generate, very up-to-date reports from that.
Yeah, and I think if it isn't ready to be implemented yet, maybe once she gets it populated for 2024. It's just, I do think actually having the summary of the permits, locations, what they're for is helpful to the board.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, if we could get just a listing of them until, iWorks is up and running, that would be great. Other comments regarding monthly reports, department reports from the board?
I just have one quick question.
Yes, sir.
I think obviously we're down to 3 members now on the Board of Adjustment and Appeals. And are we advertising, realizing that that will be a difficult board to get?
Board of Adjustment and Appeals is one of the boards that has been, we've had an ongoing advertisement. In discussions with the chair, I did reach out and say that, once the board is able to get through this hearing, I would like to find a way on how we can better support and how, the staff and the, board can, help that, board, gain some new members and then make sure that the ones that are there are feeling supported.
It would be nice if at some point we could get that back to 5.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Others?
And I guess just to clarify, Bob, on the Board of Appeals, they would have to have a unanimous decision in order.
Correct,
So that's the other challenge with only three.
yes, yes. So that's the verbal TA report. What is in your packet, was, information from the treasurer's report. There's the memo and then the, expense revenue summary. And I guess I will, answer any questions if you have any. And the one thing that was not included in here, because I didn't have it at that point, was the Machias Savings Bank statement, and I did reach out to, the bank, and I provided them what we have for description, for accounts and numbers, and so, they said that for our statement that's gonna come out in March, that, the Machias Savings Bank fund names will match what we have, so it makes it a little bit easier for the board to follow.
The one for the month of March or the one that comes in March for the month of February?
So it's gonna come in the beginning of March for February, but that will be the first month and going forward, it'll be updated,
Wonderful, thank you.
so.
Comments?
Mine will be in relation to the budget discussion later.
Yep, okay. Anything? Is that it?
Unless, yeah, from here.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
on the treasurer's report,
Okay.
are there any areas you're concerned about?
So the one area right now is, the admin area, which is, I mean, right now, the overall budget, is fine, which is at the end of the day, you know, when it comes to at the end of the year, the final number that we need to look at. But as far as, that budget overall, that's the one where, you know, there's been some expenditures that are a little bit more than where I would like to see them at this point, but, I'm still hopeful that it's gonna match. I don't anticipate that we're gonna go over, but.
And what percentage of the fiscal year are we at right now? About,
So with this particular, and this, I mean, changes, this breaks it out by each department. I don't have the total number for the entire thing.
no, but I mean, we're at like 70.
65.
Yeah, it's in the mid to high sixties is where I would guess it.
And from the admin budget, is that where is Mitch's charges? Where are they coming out?
That's going to
Contracted?
come out of the part-time admin salary.
Okay, so it's not contracted services, it's coming out of part-time admin?
Right.
That's what it was,
Okay.
going on, yeah, yeah. And that's what primarily just the changes in the salaries and the employees and the shift of that. Is what I'm kind of keeping an eye on, but other than that, I mean, we're not exceeding any unexpected department lines over where we should be this time. And we haven't had any astronomically unexpected expenses. The one thing is contingency is eaten up, but we also haven't paid that bill yet, so we don't really know exactly how much of it is eaten up, so. But that's where that stands.
Good. All right, moving on, regular business, item 24-021. Cousins Pier state of repair, there's a report in the packet. And the report basically says the pier is in decent condition except for some of the cribbing, which has not, I don't believe, been costed out. I would expect they're waiting to hear from us that we agree that the cribbing should be repaired. And then the other question that comes up is, in the past couple of years, off and on, we've had discussions about enhancing the float on the, what I'll call the CTC side of the Cousins Pier, which is our expense. Enhancing it to allow an 80-foot gangway coming down from the pier. Enhancing it also perhaps to allow more and improved pump tie-ups. And enhancing it to improve the tie-up in different weather conditions of the CTC vote. So any comments from the board on those topics? Carol?
Well, I think Coastal Waters is looking at that, so it seems like we should share this report with Coastal Waters. And then I think sort of have, ask them to consider, kind of, I think they're working on sort of their own capital plan with a replacement schedule and that sort of thing. I mean, that's my understanding. I didn't go to the meeting, but, it seems like they could advise on the same and the costs associated with that. It seems like they should be in the loop on even the Yarmouth side.
I thought they got copied on it when it came from Yarmouth. Do you remember, Vika, if they were copied?
I don't remember.
I don't think they've seen it. They had a meeting last week and I don't think they've seen it. And I just want to be sure I understand this report. There's no page number, but it says maintenance repairs, replace corroded metal hardware, replace stone-filled timber cribbing. That's 4 and 5, which are the events are the locations. Is that, I've never heard that term before. And then consider power wraps in the intertidal zone. That's the recommendation for, is that right? Am I reading that correctly?
You are reading that correctly.
So they're only looking at 2 of the stone-filled cribbing structures, right?
I think that's all there is.
Right.
That's right.
Oh, maybe that's right. Okay.
And the pier the pier posts, while they look pretty beat up because of ice and
Right.
bugs and such, their judgment is that they are still sound, even though they're shredded in the pictures. But the pictures of the vents are the A-frame like structure under, that's what that refers to. Yeah. And then the pictures of the vents look decent, as per the report. But yes, that's the repairs they're waiting on. So I'll make sure, Mika and I can make sure that Coastal Waters gets a copy of this. Does the board want to hear what Coastal Waters has to say about enhancing the float system? That would be a capital project.
Yeah, and I would say that would be a good task for them to make I know they made a recommendation back 3 or 4 years ago. It would be good to ask them what they would recommend. And they might recommend some kind of incremental increase in size. That seems to be their approach. So they might add a float a year or something. And I think it was Yarmouth that requested that we consider a float on our side, so we're not doing the pickup job on their side.
They didn't request it, but when we suggested it, they said that would be a good idea. So
Yes,
you
that's
could-
what it was.
Yeah. I was there that day. Okay. Other comments on that report? Mark?
I think there's only the one big stone crib built there on the war.
Is there only one?
Think so.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Bottom line is, I think Carol's right. I think we should let Coastal Waters chime in. I'm personally gonna be fine with allowing Yarmouth or whoever is initiating to get a price on fixing the crib and fixing the metal brackets and fixing or giving us a price on sleeves for the pilings, although I don't think we're gonna be getting any ice over there anytime soon. And I'm not sure we need those, especially if the pilings are sound. As far as improvements over there in the future, I think we should go after a DOT grant.
Right.
And that would require probably ADA, coming into compliance with ADA. And I won't waste any much more time on my comment, but before we go after that with Yarmouth and or us going after grants, there really should be a hard thought and a hard look at the elevation of that wharf and that area over there before you put a lot of money into an existing elevation that may not be adequate. Doesn't appear that way. The last tide, that big storm went right up into it, right up into the bus turnaround. The last tide was only a good sized Moon King tide, and that went right up And I hardly ever go to town, of course, I go to town when that happens, and I'm looking at it, and it was right up into the timber easily, so my whole point is, let's not pour money into something that we're gonna have to change and.
Correct, and the storm damage from December 22, which they fixed with that rubber. I mean, the fact is, it was vulnerable during that storm and damaged the structure. So but I think that, you know, whose responsibility that is, I guess it's a joint responsibility. You know,
It's their town wharf, it's our primary point of egress, ingress.
but I mean, we're responsible for 80% of the cost.
Correct. Yeah, yeah.
I agree, I think that's a really important point that we should be thinking, you know, about sort of its final design elevation and,
And I'll be quick if I may,
Yeah, please.
Mr. Chairman. I'm gonna be getting off this board in May, late May. But I would be willing to stick around for conversations if the town and or CTC would like me to continue conversations of transportation and access.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Other comments? Comments from the public? All right, seeing none. Moving on to the letter that David drafted to the Maine DOT in reference to the Blanchard lot, which is in packet. Letter Chris Mayo, I won't bother reading it out loud. Any comments from the board on that letter? Carol?
well, first of all, I think the letter should come from the Board of Selectmen and either Bob or we could sign it. And I think I would call this sort of something like adaptation of the parking lot to sea level rise. So, I mean, that's what we've talked to Chris about this, I think now 3 times. The first time was probably 2 years ago. And he had told us he was gonna have somebody from DOT come and evaluate it, and apparently he did make that request, but those folks never made it down there. So I think Chris is committed. The thing that he clarified for us is that DOT would take responsibility for improvements of the lot, which I think is big. So I guess my suggestion is, with the tone of the letter is a little demanding, and I recommend we tone that down to sort of say, you know, we have had previous discussions, DOT has agreed that, you know, they would evaluate the lot and come up with some design improvements. And, you know, could you please give us a timeline for when you think you might be able to implement that? Something like that. I think it needs to be a very pleasant tone because we're asking for their help. And they have a lot of things on their plate, and this one has fallen off their radar, but I think they're committed to it, and I don't really want to come in guns blazing. I don't think that's going to be effective, personally. That's my take.
Good, other thoughts? Carol, any suggestions on how we accomplish that?
Well, I think what we're really looking for is, I think the pictures are very beneficial because they show the
Very much.
significant flooding and damage to the lot. And I think asking for a specific timeline for when they can address this. And even, you know, maybe a meeting with the board if we want. I mean, I think it's important enough that, because it has kind of fallen off the radar. You know, maybe just a virtual meeting with Chris, because he's spoken to me, he's spoken to Bob, you know, but it's never been the Board of Selectmen. So I think as a board, we could request, you know, we need to have a conversation with you, a meeting to kind of figure out how we're gonna fix this. Because there was damage from this last storm, you know, 2022 and 2024.
So should we ask for Chris to meet with us in this letter?
Yeah, I think with the select board.
Yeah, yeah. And you suggested changing the title of it from request for future storm protection to,
I would say for, you know, adaptation of the you know, Cousins Island parking lot, you know, for climate change, because that's the money they're gonna use. They're gonna use, you know, adaptation money, not regular, you know, funding. And I agree, I sent that information to you guys, so just for the public's information. Apparently DOT is gonna look at the wharfs on Long and Shabig and I think Great Diamond and kind of about, they had $4 million set aside in 2024 to upgrade or repair, maintain
Is that the Chandler's Pier you're talking
the
about?
Chandler's Pier, the Long Island Pier, and I think another one on Great Diamond. And then the Shabig budget for this time frame is like $17,000. It's like nothing. So but I don't think that it's appropriate to kind of cite that. I think it was just when people.
We could bring that up in that conversation.
In the conversation.
Yeah, okay. Okay, well, I'd like to thank David for writing the letter. Is the board okay if we can take care of a few of those details and sign and send it up?
You okay?
Yeah, you're changing the whole letter, so somebody else might as well rewrite it.
I think we can just change a few things, but yeah. All right? All right, anything else can do that maybe tomorrow?
Thank you, David.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Discuss the tower agreement between Cumberland, Yarmouth, and Shabig Island and take any necessary action. So, if you recall, this is the addition of mostly Cumberland and Yarmouth elements, additional equipment, small pieces of equipment to the existing tower that will give them a much better coverage of their town relative to backhaul. And because they're interested in obtaining permission from us to add those things to the tower, they've been what I would consider pretty generous in offering to pay for the heavy load of the changes and helping us out in a few other areas around that project as well. So there was a copy of the proposed agreement, which was drafted by, I believe, someone from Natalie's firm, if I'm not mistaken, not Natalie.
Bernstein, sure.
Okay, Bernstein, sure. And Bill Shane was leading the effort, and then Nat Tupper kind of took it over in his last days, and now Nat has left and it's back in Cumberland's lap to kind of drive it home. I've asked them to confirm that they are responsible for all the attachments or exhibits except for the site plan. Our facilities and building committee is working to finalize the site plan with just a few more questions to be answered relative to the trenching. And then we would have what we need to go to the planning board for a preliminary meeting. The chair of the planning board thinks that the planning board might be satisfied just with a conversation in the preliminary meeting as opposed to a full-blown hearing. And they do have the right to waive those requirements if they see fit. Code officer's been involved as well in conversations about what's required. So as a letter that would be signed by the town of Shabig, is the board okay with this draft as is? Or are there areas of concern? Mark?
I read through this 3 times, and I don't do well reading legal language, but it's well structured. And like you say, Bob, I think the Yarmouth and Cumberland have laid this out. So it's not only not going to be a negative effect to Shabig and the town of Shabig, I think it's going to be a positive effect and a good ongoing emergency response relationship. On page 1, 2, 3, section 5, capital reserve. Within so many days they didn't fill it in yet, following the effective date, and within so many days they didn't fill it in yet, following each anniversary thereof, each tenant, meaning Yarmouth and Cumberland, shall pay to the town of Shabig the following: the sum of $4,000 as a contribution to a capital reserve fund to be held by Shebig. The sum of $600 for annual service contracts, inspections, and normal maintenance, and the sum of $200 or 1/3 the cost of the energy consumed by the tower. My point of reading that is, that's more than reasonable. It sets up a good capital reserve, savings account
For the tower.
keep growing it so that when or if, things need to be upgraded, there's going to be money set aside to upgrade it. They're recognizing the, cost of yearly, maintenance and energy costs if there are.
Yeah, the amount of wattage being drawn by the equipment on the tower is pretty low. So when it says either the higher of either of these two fees, it's probably gonna be that minimum charge because it's not much electricity.
And they've also done an engineering study to make sure that this tower, which is a self-supporting, which means it has no guy wire, is not going to be affected by the attachment of more. So I've read through it. It looks good to me. I'm not an attorney.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Carol?
I guess do I understand correctly, the two exhibits A and B are 1 and 2 is the point they're using, I mean, it's just, because I have a note on here that says 3 towers, but it's a single tower, right?
That's just something I wrote on there, on the left hand,
Yeah,
yeah, that's just a note that I wrote myself.
oh, okay, so it's 1 tower, and they each have certain space, and that's what's gonna be under exhibit 1 and 2?
It's exhibit 1, 2, 3, 4, and
Right,
5.
but 1 and 2 is empty, so I don't know what's going.
Yes, it'll be an actual diagram of the equipment they have on the tower, yes.
All right, and then exhibit 3 is the site plan, and is that the thing that's at the back here?
The thing at the back is a rough draft of a site plan. That's the current state of what we've gotten from Source City. It doesn't yet show the trench because the electrical engineering firm is still answering some questions about the trench. The trench is quite likely, gonna go straight from the pole to the central office for broadband. And then it'll take a sharp 90-degree left and go from the broadband central office across the front of the building until it gets to where the switch is. Michael?
That's right.
Sure. Can you come up and talk?
Go by that podium over there, if you don't mind. Thank you.
What we've always been thinking about the trench is that it runs from the pole, which is just west of the end of the parking lot, the part of the apron in front of the firehouse. And parallel with the edge of the tar, up to a point where that line meets the line coming from the face of the firehouse. And then it turns left and goes into the firehouse. And goes 22.5 meters to the right,
Yes.
up to the, CO.
Yep,
Okay?
yes.
Yeah, and I guess, maybe I wasn't clear, the point of my question was, that's not the site plan that will be the exhibit.
Correct, it is not.
That was the point of my question.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Thank you, Michael.
yeah.
Okay, other questions? Do we need a motion to approve this, or is it just a sense of the board that this will be okay to line once we have all the attachments? We can look at it again once we have all the attachments.
We should take a motion.
Well, they're not just attachments, there are a lot of blanks in here to be filled in as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes,
So, in section 5, where Mark referenced the reserve accounts.
Yep.
And I can double check with legal, but for a capital reserve account to be created, it needs to go through a town meeting, to then end up on the reserve account list. I think that with the board signing this agreement, I think one mindful thing that might be worth, if that is the case, because that's how historically the reserve accounts have been created, to put in language that, effective July first, that reserve account, but that might be just one little glitch that
Yeah.
might need to be.
Can you confirm that with Natalie and then let me know? Instead of that, Carol,
So are we gonna wait until the thing is final? And then
I think if we just have the sense of the board that the agreement looks good, we can report that back to the other two parties and tell them we're ready to sign it when it's finalized.
And is there any time sensitive aspect for the town of Cumberland and the town of Yarmouth?
They are relatively eager to get moving. I'd say the larger time sensitivity is on our part, that we have the trenching done for the purposes of moving broadband forward on the schedule that broadband has in front of us. Therefore, getting permits in place and ready to dig as soon as the frost leaves, which hasn't come yet, but whatever. Dave, you had something?
Yeah, I'm just curious, talking about the generator. There was some talk as to whether or not the generator would be of sufficient capacity to handle both the broadband needs as well as the town
Yeah.
needs. And I don't really see that that's in here, or if that's no longer a concern.
It is still a concern. It's being led by the facilities committee conversation. I think the position we've taken is that both our town office and our public safety, fire and rescue, need to be fully functional in the event of a power outage. There was originally talk from the electrical engineer that the current generator is probably big enough with this, the incremental load from this project is pretty minor, both on the broadband side and on the radio tower side, but it's there. And their statement was, should be okay, might have to turn a few things off in the fire department or the town office. The facilities committee, I believe, has come down with the position that in the event of an emergency, we do not want to be operating at less than full capacity in the office or in public safety. We need to be at full capacity. So if these few changes mean that we need to go to an additional generator, what are those changes? How much of a change is it? And what's the new generator going to cost? What's the value on the resale market of the existing generator? Would it be more appropriate to have two generators? Those are all in conversation with the electrical engineering firm right now.
So what does that mean as far as this contract is concerned?
There is no, we have not asked the other two towns if they would pay part of a new generator. They have not offered to do so. And we could consider asking, but it's what they're adding to the generator is probably along the lines of a 5% addition or a 3% addition or a 7% addition to the load. So asking them to pay a portion of the generator probably doesn't make sense, given that they're already contributing to a capital account for the tower and they're already contributing a minimum for the power requirement every year or every month ongoing. If, on the other hand, the electrical engineer comes back and says, well, they're 25% of the load of the new generator, then that's a different conversation.
Right.
Mark?
On page 2, paragraph 2, construction of a new shelter building / shared facility. Sentence number 2 says, building will be connected to both the electricity serving the property as well as a new blank kilowatt generator to be purchased, installed on the property in the location depicted on exhibit 3.
Yeah.
The generator will then be maintained by the town of Quebec. What this says to me is they're very well prepared to buy a new, probably propane generator for this system, which would free up any concerns, in my opinion. The electrical engineers can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's just the size of the generators in question.
You know,
Right,
if you read that sentence, it says we're buying it.
yeah, I took it to mean Shabig bought it, right? Shabig is supplying,
Say that,
well, I
It
guess
is
that's how.
commas. It's commas, yeah. So the building will be connected to electricity serving the property as well as a new generator to be purchased, comma, installed, comma, attached, comma, maintained and repaired by the town of Chevet.
Yeah, I thought it was Shabig.
well, this is just me speaking. I'm gonna have a problem with that.
Yeah. Thank you. I did not,
I guess I took it to be Shabig, and that's not what your impression is?
no.
And I'm going to, not be able to live with that. I don't think that's reasonable for us to pay for a generator. If they're recommending that we split a new generator, 40, 40, and 20, like the rest of the agreement, by the way, which is what they're doing, then I'll go along with that, but I'm not gonna go along with upgrading a generator because they're adding to our system and we've got concerns about load. That's just me.
I agree. And all the conversations we've had as three parties have not at all referred to the new generator. And when I read this, I totally stayed on that sentence. So thank you for pointing that out, Mark.
So it sounded to me like they're building the building, we're supplying the generator.
They're purchasing a building.
Well, right, but
Putting
they're
the contract
taking
out.
responsibility.
Yeah.
They just take a little bit of,
They maybe didn't mean it this way, too.
right, well, that's why I pointed it out.
Right.
Thank you, Mark.
Just may need a little more discussion and get back and forth.
I'm gonna blame Matt Dupper because he's not around anymore.
But it is true that exhibit 4, which identifies shared equipment, the generator is not listed there.
Yeah, Yarmouth as an interim town manager, I'm not sure who that person is, have you heard?
The economic development guy.
All right, so with that exception, we're okay with it, looking for the final thing to be drafted.
And I guess just for 30, we would be willing to split the cost of the, we just don't want to be solely responsible. Is that where you're at?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you read other areas of the agreement, Yarmouth is assuming 40% of the cost, Cumberland is assuming 40%, Sheboygan is assuming 20. That model would be very fine with me unless it went 33, 33, and 33.
Well, I think the discussions in the past have centered on the fact that the generator does a lot more than just the tower. The generator does our public safety building, it does our town office, it does now broadband, all that stuff. But what surprises me is that in the contract, it says new generator. That's not consistent with any conversation we've had. So, okay. Yeah. Carol?
Yeah, and I wonder if simplifying it to be, Shabik has a generator and the other two parties have their own generator might. completely work well.
That, if that was possible from an electrical design
Right.
standpoint, that might work, but I'm not sure how you can split all the equipment on the tower to have one
Wow.
generator.
Okay.
Yeah, so, but we'll dig into it and find out. Okay, done with that one? Yep. Moving along to discuss, any comments from the public on that? All right. Moving along, 24-024, to discuss the municipal waste handling agreement and recycling services agreement with Eco Maine and take any necessary action, which I believe also includes that we need to sign the agreement pretty soon. Is that right, Vika?
Is it in your packets?
Yes. And so it was the letter that we got a while back.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so the agreements are due to be renewed in March. So I'll have to put those on the first week in March, agenda with the agreement, and yes, it does need to be signed.
Okay.
I did touch base with Eco Maine. The agreement is not changing from what it has been, up to this point. The one change is the cost increase, which just happens to align with when, both of the agreements were, ready to be renewed, so. But I apologize for not having that happen. That will be first week in March.
Okay. It's on the list for future agenda items. Okay.
Sorry,
Yes.
very quickly.
Yes.
Before we leave that subject, and this is, the reason I'm asking this is that we're going to talk about budget later on in this meeting. So is the estimates that we have so far that you put in for municipal solid waste good enough for the budget discussion tonight?
Yes, the changes are as a result to the increases.
Thank you.
Good. Moving on, 24-025, to discuss the survey of the stone pier, the questions regarding the survey of the stone pier and take any necessary.
Comment on the dog.
Oh, sorry, you're right.
All right.
Teddy, do you have a comment on the transfer station?
That was part of the job. I'm gonna stumble through public speaking again, and it's very, gonna be unpopular, and I'm sure it's very irrelevant to what you guys are dealing with, but I just wanna mention a couple things, and about Macy's, which we used to call. And I stand here without a solution. I'm not gonna like run a redemption or something, which would be much better if I was volunteering to do that, but I'm sure that a lot of the island will say that they missed that. And having lived in Yarmouth and having known someone from Cape Elizabeth, what I experienced in Yarmouth is what, they were like Thursday through Monday. People could leave stuff, and I got some really cool stuff in my apartment there. And then by Monday, they just, and this is the thing, where it's some money thing, the town came in and they brought a big loader and they dumped it all in and they threw it out unless it was really good. But I'm sure a lot of people in Silent missed that. And I know that in the past, the Macy's at the dump was, stuff would stay there for a long, long time. And I don't wanna, I know people are trying to keep the dump very different and stuff, but I just want to speak up for the fact that, and like I said, I don't have a solution, but I'm sure a lot of people miss that, and then I suggest that it probably will save, a minuscule amount of money, but stuff that won't go into the stream of dump, and it's in the spirit of recycling, and this probably isn't the right forum to bring it up. I should probably go around and talk to people who would want to volunteer and man this thing, but it's just, being in a house that I think there a lot of stuff, I'm like, I don't want to just throw this out, when people can use it, and I just want to throw that in there. I know you guys got way heavier, more important shit, stuff to talk about, but hey, I'm doing a little better on public speaking anyway.
Nicely said.
And that's all I want to say, and I don't want to throw stuff on his shoulder.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Teddy. Can we take that under advisement as a discussion item?
Yep, I'm happy to make a comment if it helps as to why it was. So a couple of years ago, it was a difficult decision for the board to make. And to let the transfer station attendant know that that was no longer something that could take place. And it was really a twofold part. One is the transfer station is experiencing a limit that is really difficult to control right now. And so the focus needs to be on figuring out how to better maintain that and what needs to be done. And the other part is people really started taking advantage of that service. And it became the issue of one attendant having to manage what people take advantage of and manage what is required to be managed. And so I don't think that was stopped as a result because it was not wanted. I think it was more of how to redirect what needed to be focused on in the time being. So if that helps.
Should I say that again?
I'd kind of like to move on, Teddy. I think we got the point.
Well, I just want to say that, that's why I said, I know that this isn't the right forum, but I just wanted to put it out there because I know people listen.
Yep.
And it's a Steve that I think it's a very apropos subject for this day of recycling and also not adding to the waste stream that we are paying.
I appreciate it.
And I don't have a solution, I just wanted to plant the seed.
It's a really.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that feel that way, and like I said, I don't want to add to the burden of everything. All right,
Thanks, Teddy.
go move on.
Thanks. Okay. Other comments from the public? Okay. We had the item 24-025. We had spoken with Weston Sampson about having to do set survey, take a look at the survey points that were placed on the stone pier a few years ago to see if there has been any movement on those very precisely located survey points relative to storm action and relative to the suggestion in that study several years ago that we monitor the stability of the stone pier on an ongoing basis. The survey company and Weston Sampson came back with a question. If we don't see any movement from the survey points that are there, should we be adding more survey points or should we rely on the ones that are there? So I think that's the question at hand for the board tonight. So, did I get that right, Carol?
Yeah, I'm not sure they threw it out to the whole board. I think where the gist of their question is, if they come out and find out that they don't see much change in the survey markers, they might sort of expedite the survey and call it good.
Oh, okay.
And so save some money, frankly, because if you read the email, they were gonna demove and go back. And if there's an indication that there was movement, then they might do a more comprehensive survey. I took it to be kind of the level, if they come out and everything looks unchanged on the survey markers for the survey team, I think then they will finish up their work in one day and be done.
The survey team.
Right, I think that's separate from the inspection, the engineering inspection of the structure.
Okay,
That's
so
my
it's not a question of
impression.
additional survey points, it's a question as to the depth of the study of the existing survey
I
points?
think that's what that's my take on it, and I haven't talked to them, and I think the best thing might be to talk to the survey company rather than going through Weston and Sampson. So that's kind of the gist of it from my discussion with Sam. I think it would be better to actually call Doucette and make sure we understand. Because the cost was fairly high, it was significantly more than what the initial estimate was, but I think it's because of that additional day.
Okay.
That's my guess.
Other thoughts from the board?
Well, and I think the other thing to update the board on, originally, we had approved their scope of work to come out on February like 14th, I think it was,
Yep.
12th. The weather was quite poor that Wednesday with a pretty strong northwest wind. So they have opted to come next month. There's another, actually even slightly lower tide. So the game plan right now is to come in the middle of March at that next kind of extreme low tide.
Yeah, their prior schedule was to come during that nor'easter that missed us, but hit Boston really hard, and they were gonna be traveling up from Boston. That was their reason for canceling. Carol, do you want to have that conversation with Doucette about
Yeah,
the?
I think it would
You do
just
that?
be a phone call. The other thing though, in that email was they would like a place to be able to leave their equipment overnight. Either, in the public safety building or somewhere so that they don't have to haul it back and forth. And if we even had a vehicle that was available to them, that would be ideal, I think, so. I think I will suggest they contact you directly.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We can provide the farm.
Yeah,
All right, sounds good. Anything else on that? Okay. Other business from the board? Seeing none. Communications, you got anything?
Yeah, I have a couple of things worth mentioning, to you. So the town office just received a nice big stack from FEMA, and they are copies of the flood insurance study materials for Cumberland County, prepared by FEMA. I have not done so yet, but we can access the products right on their website and then upload it to the town website. So that is on my to-do list to do that, but I figured that was worth sharing if you see all that on the town website. If you do want to see it, it is in the town office. There is a ton of maps. So, any questions about that?
Are they approved at this point or are they for review, public comment, that kind of thing?
So to my understanding, these are approved and they go into effect June 20th, 2024. Is, that's based on the letter and they're already printed, large prints, and, I was gonna access the portal on the website and upload them to the town website so that people can really zoom in on their location to see how that impacts them. So.
Carol?
are you gonna upload FEMA's, a link to the digital maps that FEMA has, or are you gonna put them on sort of our parcel maps that Judy has made?
So what this says is that, as a community official, and in addition to the hard copy included here, you may want digital copies of the flood hazard maps and reports that have been issued for your adoption and used by your community. And so I was gonna go on the portal and see what, so my understanding is that big maps that we've received of section by section is exactly what's gonna be provided.
Yeah, so we can, and that still may be worth doing, but I think the other part is Judy could potentially, she can connect to their digital coverage, and that way people could look at it relative to their property boundaries and that sort of thing. So that
On the
might,
GIS viewer.
I can connect with her and see.
yeah, I think that's probably an option, and that would be good. Judy would probably know. I don't even think you have to ask FEMA, she would know. But it would be good to have both, because the maps are static, but people could then look at their properties, and there is a whole process where people can challenge the designation. But they have to go through multiple steps, you know, but
Yeah.
FEMA's got that out. But this could change people's insurability when these new maps have been a long time coming,
Yeah.
like decades. The maps we have right now are like 72, 85, they're really old.
Stone Pier is very,
Right, so for example, the Stone Pier base flood elevation on these maps is 20 feet, which would mean we'd have to raise the elevation of the pier 10 feet, which is, nobody thinks that's realistic. So,
Okay,
it's important, I guess is the point.
the information is important to the public relative to the insurability of their property or not. As well as a reference for what FEMA thinks could happen.
Well, and some towns have adopted, you know, new base flood elevations as part of their ordinances. So it's not something, you know, it's something we may, that's part of the whole storm damage event. So it's something we might want to think about.
Okay. Others speak up, other communications?
yeah, so just a couple of communications in terms of grant opportunities, which I assume probably some of the board, received these. So, one is, the, Maine Coastal Program, the annual grant, the grant that we received last year was the Shore and Harbor Planning Grant. It looks like this year they've combined the Coastal Community Program Grant and the Shore and Harbor Planning Grant. My understanding with this is slightly different unless I'm confusing it with another one where, you can get up to $50,000. And there's, yes, so this is, the maximum grant is $50,000. There is no match required for fiscal year 25. And so there's a couple of different, things, that maybe if the town is interested in applying, whether it's, review and recommend changes to municipal land use laws, develop comprehensive inventory of public tidal access, points and work in waterfront, hazard prone locations. So in all these conversations, if there's, another opportunity for funding.
What's the deadline to submit?
So with this one, what they're looking for is a letter of intent by Friday, March 25th.
Okay.
March 29th. And then the final application isn't due until May 31st. And so, I'm happy to look into it more or forward the information, but I figured it was worth sharing if it's something that we want to explore a little bit more.
Does it say anything in the communication regarding whether you're still eligible to apply if you currently have one open?
That was a question that I had, as well. So this is for fiscal year 25. The grant that we have now is, we're supposed to be done with that.
Right.
Oh,
So we won't be overlapping,
okay,
but that was a question that came up to me.
And for example, or even on Cousins Island could potentially, at the wharf, could potentially be eligible. So like the redesign work.
Yeah, conduct climate vulnerability assessment, including sea level rise, storm surge, and flooding at critical public facilities.
Yeah, so it
That's
might,
the Blanchard lot.
we did apply for whatever it was called, DOT infrastructure grant, I did find out, they had a lot of applications, no surprise. And so they couldn't give me an idea of when they'd let us know. These funds could be used to match that grant. But we didn't put a very big match in, so I frankly wouldn't waste the grant on, on that match. I'd use it for something else. But I do think that, we also could use it for the potentially some separate thing at the Stone Pier, for example, so.
So I can forward this to the entire board and maybe it could be a topic of discussion at the next meeting with some potential ideas or
I
something.
would send it to the Coastal Waters Committee too.
Anything else, Vika?
Yes, two more things. So another one is funding opportunity for housing work. So this is something that came to me from, JP Cog. And it is a funding opportunity from the State Department of Economic and Community Development. It's a grant to, municipalities, and it could be used for community housing planning and implementation, servicing to support the creation of housing development plans, including municipal ordinances, policy amendments to support those plans. I haven't dug more into it, but I don't know if maybe it was something worth for the planning board to look into. Figured it was one chat.
Yes, can you forward that email along, that's from GP Cog, you said?
Yeah,
Does it say anything else about what's eligible, what kind of work is eligible? Does it include like survey and site development?
no, it's just a one-page thing, and like I said, there is a link for,
Okay,
it was like, I think 120 pages, and I didn't take the time to read it.
you could send it, I'll take a look at it, I'd be interested in that. Carol?
Yeah, as part of, I think it was LD 2003, there is money available through economic and community development for ordinance review, because we're all required to incorporate LD 2003. And I mentioned it to the planning board, and I don't think they've done anything, but I think the ordinance changes they are proposing should be reviewed by legal. There is money available from the state to pay for that. And it's $5,000 to $10,000. So I would, if you're gonna send that, I would encourage you to, I'll send you the link to the
I can
program, but
forward
they
it,
should
yeah.
really, somebody needs to apply for that, and we should have those ordinance changes reviewed so that we don't have what happened last year happen again.
And those ordinance changes, I have been in contact with, the planning board chair, just asking basic questions of the timeline of when those things need to be. So I think they're trying to be, better prepared to have all their information lined up in time for town meeting. So
Yeah, but we
once
do,
you forward that to me, I'll go ahead and pass it on to them.
yeah,
Did
and it might be a reimbursement.
come up in those conversations? Legal review of the proposed changes before they go to the town meeting or probably even
I
public
would-
workshop?
I believe so, don't hold me to it, but with something like that, it should absolutely go to. The last one is another one, and this one, it came from the recompense fund. They sent it to the town of Schwig. And so I thought there were specific regular requirements for what, people could apply for recompense fund. I know the school has applied for a couple of small things, but, the suggestion I had with this, if it's something that, we were able to do, the town office AC unit died 2 years ago, and so I brought my home window one. Because we haven't been able to find one to replace, and it's about $1,000 to replace that. And so I figured maybe something like the recompense fund could fund that, because it's either that or I can include it in next year's budget, so.
Sure.
Just a thought.
And I guess that's kind of, when I saw that, I thought, well, and then we're giving money to nonprofits on the island, and personally, my preference would be to cut, to have recompense help fund the nonprofits and not, I don't really feel it's appropriate to have the town receive money from recompense. I think it's great for the nonprofits too, but I would rather have them fund more of the nonprofits and not have the town apply. That's my, it just feels a little weird to me, but that's me.
Or, That's exactly how I feel. I appreciate them sending us that letter, I really do. But that's the first thing I thought about it. I'm not sure how appropriate and what kind of a message that would send for the town to say, yeah, sure, we'll take a grant or something, when in fact, a lot of the nonprofits probably use a boost once in a while, so.
That's understandable.
So put it in the budget.
You're still a nonprofit.
What's that? Yes, we're still a not-for-profit.
Or doing it Macy's.
Didn't want to say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, expectations, through the minutes from February 7th.
Second.
Moved by Mark, second by Carol to approve the minutes. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? All right. And budget workshop, moving on to the budget workshop. So focus tonight is departmental budgets. We've all had a chance to look over the current draft of the budget. And again, I would suggest we go through department by department and see if the board has comments, suggested changes, questions, that kind of thing as we go through each department. Does that work, Carol?
So I just wanted to check, I went to the OneDrive, and so the date of the budget report I have is, or the budget is 2020, is that the right one?
220.
I mean, 220.
Yeah.
Is that the right, the most up-to-date budget?
Yes.
And is that budget, that's the same budget that was in the packet?
Yes.
Okay.
What date are you talking about? February 20th.
Yeah, so David has 12/2/15.
I've got 215, and actually I have the one that came in the packet, and then the one that I picked up at the town is 215.
I have 215 too.
Yeah, so I think that I downloaded it from the OneDrive, and so mine's a little more current. So that's why I asked the question.
Okay.
When you say dated, which section are you seeing? Are you looking up on the top one?
Top right.
Yeah. Top right, I've got.
So these guys have 215.
Yeah.
I downloaded it today from the
Oh,
website.
good. So the 215 is in there. The 220 is the one that I put in there, when I put it in for the Excel one. Which, no numbers are different. So,
That's good.
it's the same exact document. It's just, I uploaded it to him in an Excel and then I just have the tendency to put it all in the same, so, but it's the same document.
Okay.
But if you notice, there is one in there now in that drive, in that same folder, that is an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's what I downloaded and printed out.
That's what's
It
easier
should
to
be
be.
no different.
Yep, yep. Okay, so first department, Department 1300, Admin Board of Selectmen. Comments or questions? Carol, then Mark.
Well, they're probably the same. I mean, there's a big increase under 1,000. I guess it's 1,000 under wages, and I can see that 1010 has decreased, but I guess what I'd like to see is sort of the detail for that. I don't need to see it obviously this minute, but how that all breaks out between wages full-time and wages part-time.
Okay.
I think, before I ask questions, because I think it might answer my question.
I did add the two lines together, both prior budget and this budget. And
Yeah,
when you've done that, so it's a 20% increase overall.
yeah, and I just want to understand where the
Yeah.
changes are happening, and then we can.
I can send,
Is that your question?
Kind of,
I can upload the document that I collected all that from, and put it in here, but what it is it's, the last couple of years, our deputy clerk was a part-time position, and so the deputy clerk is now a full-time position, and so is the clerk, and so the 1,000 wages full-time is now included with a 3% COLA increase for bookkeeper, full-time deputy, full-time clerk, and TA. So it consolidates all those positions, but I can send that information
Yeah, I
over.
think it
I'll upload it in the OneDrive.
All right, and Mark, your questions?
Well, mine's very similar to Carol's. I mean, basically, I understand that part-time has been converted over into full-time. Is that accurate? It used to be part-time, now.
Yeah, deputy clerk was part-time, clerk was full-time. We hired a new full-time clerk and now have a full-time deputy clerk.
Yeah. I mean, I guess this is a question, not a criticism, but my math says that wages full-time are up $39,263. My point to that is that's about a 23% increase. So I'd like to hear the breakdown as well.
Breakdown.
Thank you.
All right, other questions in Department 1300? Everybody understands item 2041, that's the basic cost of going to Trio Online,
Is that 2030?
item 2041.
Oh, sorry.
Technology.
Could I ask a question about the telephone?
Please.
One-time cost of $1,000 for a new phone system, is it that simple?
Yeah, so the telephones that we have, there's 7 or 8 of them. Their original from when the office became an office, and we're slowly having some die, and they're really losing their life, and so we really need to upgrade the whole entire system, and that's what it costs for.
Thank you.
And the office staff will set it up instead of hiring somebody to do it.
Other questions in Department 1300? All right, moving along to Department 1400 Assessor, there's no change, any questions? Okay, Department 1650, no change, any questions?
Elections.
Wait a minute, what number are you on, just so I,
I moved for
1650
1650 elections.
elections and board registrar.
well, before we leave admin, I guess,
Oh, okay,
sorry, 5010 audit. So 2023 actual was 6,500, 2024 is 17,250, and are we looking at multiple years combined, and then year to date is 18,600, but then you're back down to 17,250, so that's all I wanted.
So I asked for anticipated cost for fiscal year 25. They told me last week that they would get back to me by the end of this week. The reason that it is a little uneven so the reason that year to date is higher than the 17,250 anticipated is because as you recall, they were working on kind of multiple years simultaneously, and as those bills were coming in, we were applying to them to the proper years. However, when fiscal year 22 audit was finalized, we couldn't charge that far back. And same thing with fiscal year 23, this late in the game, we weren't charging. So it is a little misleading in terms of what the numbers are for fiscal year 24, because there are a few bills that came in for fiscal year 23 really late that our numbers already closed out.
So the 17,250 is just carried over from this year's budget. You don't actually have a quote yet?
I don't have a code and I didn't feel comfortable changing it.
Yeah, okay, just wanted to know. Because hopefully,
it'll go down.
we're in a groove and it should be maybe less expensive.
Well, I think 2024 budget was larger because it was inclusive of a couple of years worth of work, and we're sorting through all that, but at some point, when we're back to doing 1 year at a time, I would think it would go back down to something more than what it was in the past, but less than
We'll
2
find
years. Yeah, we'll find out.
I will go down to
I wouldn't expect.
what it was, like in the 9,000, but maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay,
I-
that's all I was, that's
Okay.
good.
Okay, so we, assessor, everybody good on that? Department 1,400? Everybody okay? 1,650, elections, no change, everybody okay? 1,700 planning,
Well, I guess on that, there's a presidential election and that next upcoming fiscal year, so that's enough for that.
We have there's gonna be two,
Three elections on March 5th, April 10th, and.
yes,
November.
but we have a lot of town staff working it
Yeah.
versus having volunteers. So we've been stepping in to work versus hiring volunteers because, so I don't anticipate the change in that changing.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? This is gonna be a request and I can be outvoted. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind, for instance, the next one is planning, if you wouldn't mind considering Department 1,700 last year budgeted at 35.25, this year proposed at 4,075. Wonder if you might consider that.
consider reading it in that fashion?
Yeah,
Oh, definitely. Yes, we can do that.
thank you.
Department 1,700 planning. 2024 budget was 3525, proposed 2025 is 4,075, a change of 15.6% up, which is in the area of the GIS, which I believe just got moved from a different department. That's the same GIS, no?
No, this is
No.
something that I was under the impression that it was every other year, but then the billing was delayed, so it is something that's every year.
It's the annual fee for the
Yeah.
GIS software,
Yeah,
online GIS.
Okay,
which is why I didn't recommend the budget last year because we hadn't received the bill,
gotcha.
but then we got,
Okay,
so yes.
yeah, we understood it was an annual bill, and I understood it was an annual bill when we first set it up. I thought we had made the decision to keep it in administration as opposed to in the planning department. I don't think it matters. So I'm fine leaving it where it is. Yes, Mark?
This might be nitpicky, line item 5090, which is consulting, has gone up from $2,000 budget to $3,000 budget, but there's been absolutely none of it used, and that, is that just because the planning board has decided they don't need any, consulting or, backup?
I think it relates to legal. When we went through the conversation last year, we moved all the legal expense into one category, but we didn't want to take everything away from planning board's ability to bring in outside resources.
So is this money, in our opinions, there for legal consulting or any consulting?
Carol?
I thought this was Judy to update our tax maps.
That
Okay.
rings a bell.
And I think it's maybe on us. I talked with her a while back and I think we have to make that request. And so maybe we didn't make it or haven't made it yet for this year, but I
I'm
think,
not suggesting cutting it, you think it's okay at 3,000?
yeah, I think it's for Judy's, correcting the parcel.
That rings a bell.
And I think it's just in there because that's where the GIS was.
Thank
Does
you.
everybody
Sure.
understand what we mean by updating the tax maps? What you see when you look on the GIS viewer on the town website, which is based on the tax map information as to where your lots are located. In some cases, some would say many cases, doesn't agree with what the registry of deeds says. So we've contracted with a company called Spatial Alternatives in Yarmouth to go through a part of our database each year and continually upgrade so that parcels match at the registry of deeds with what we're showing online. Have I said that properly, Carol?
Yeah, and so I think it's on us though to kind of send her the info and then she has to,
So do we need to determine where we want her to work, or do we leave it?
I think rather than take time out of the budget meeting, that's something that you and Vika and I can discuss, but I think the assessor needs to be in the ask to,
Thank you.
yeah. But I believe that's what the appropriation is for. I could be wrong. but-
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Other questions on planning? Okay, moving along to legal services, 2024 was 23K, 2025 proposed is 23K. And we have spent so far 6,800 in this fiscal year. Mika, where are we on bills for that? Are we relatively up to date?
There's a warrant right there and the January bills is in there.
Okay, so relatively up to date, so.
Yeah.
I would not recommend lowering it by any stretch of the imagination.
I think we should leave it the same for the moment.
Okay. 2,100 law enforcement services, 2024 budget was 56,735. 2025 initial is 53,410. That's down by about $3,300. I believe Vika said that was because their benefits cost to us went down.
The contracted service with the sheriffs, Cumberland County, their contract this year is a couple $1,000s cheaper than last year, and that's due to the anticipated individual that's coming in and the benefits that they're carrying. It's just lower than it was the year before. I did, in line with this budget, this is gonna be the second year going forward where we included, the internet and plumbing and then increase in the cottage rental, which is something that hadn't been included before. But I did receive a call from, Kevin Joyce today, just running the idea by the town and asking that it be mentioned to the board, with thought process of potentially next year's budget discussion is they have, grant opportunities, where they can apply for watercraft. And so they had, Shebig and Long Island in mind, with potentially providing, a share of and the ability for them to have their own boat. And so, my answer to that was, it all depends on the money. And it's not something that would be discussed in this year's budget, so, but that's that.
So is he proposing that there are grant opportunities and also the communities would have to match? Was that?
No, this is something that they are looking into grant opportunities that they have available federally. And whether they should look into getting boats, and would the town be interested in potentially having a sheriff here full-time if it had a boat available? And I mean, my response was, if we have a sheriff that had their own boat, that's one thing, but what's the money and what's that final number in the end is really what's gonna be the important part. So he said next, they'll look into it and let us know more.
So he's saying we would have a sheriff on the island full-time year-round if they had a boat?
They don't have any information. They were just exploring the idea of whether the town would be interested in having a sheriff with their own boat. And so
We'd love to learn more.
that's exactly what I said. We'd love to learn more, and then it depends on what the number is.
Don't tie it up at the float.
Carol,
So do I understand correctly, though, that you're not are you showing the plumbing, cottage rental,
Yeah,
internet
yeah,
is all combined in that?
Yeah, so all of this is
So
with
that's all
all of the anticipated costs, yes. The only thing, and I don't anticipate a change, is with the cottage rental. It goes up a little bit every few years. It went up last year by $700, so I don't anticipate that it'll go up this year, but if it does, obviously, I'll let you know when I find out.
And Bob, can you read your amount that's down one more time, please?
2024 budget was 56,735. 2025 initial budget is 53,410, which is down by $3,425.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, the next item would be Department 2200 Fire and Rescue. I'm going to ask that we come back to that one later. Our fire chief is teaching a class and he said he would try to get here by the end of the meeting to be here for that conversation. So please help me remember to come back to that one. Moving on, Department 2400 Code Enforcement. 2024 budget was 40,255. 2025 initial budget is 57,750. That's an increase of $17,000 and roughly $500. And we've had conversations about this in terms of the, speaking of the devil, the needs to, improve our performance and our capacity in the area of code enforcement, just relative to the number and the nature of applications and projects that we're seeing. Carol?
And also, isn't the software cost in here?
The under technology is the annual software cost, yes.
Any questions about code enforcement?
Yeah, just why is telephone all of a sudden coming up? Is that a cell phone?
That's an allowance for a cell phone?
Yep.
Mark?
I certainly don't disagree that we need to improve in the code enforcement department in this town, and I hope that we do get there and deliver. I don't mean to keep using this phrase, but a better value back to the taxpayer for the dollar. I'm also hoping that if code enforcement, just like any other enforcement, which is usually unpopular with some people, I'm hoping that it can increase revenues. In other words, actually make sure that everything that's being done is being properly permitted and paid for. So that we can offset some of these costs. And maybe we just weren't handling this department right for a long time and under budgeting, but that's a big increase, not unlike the admin budget. We're just stating a fact. Thank you.
I would add that it would be good, not tonight, but it would be good for us to go through the exercise of looking at our permits and fees, comparing them to other towns that are nearby, making sure we're keeping up on that front, because those would show up on the revenue side to offset some of this cost as well.
Yeah, and I won't keep going, but maybe if we can hire a new individual for this position that has good experience, maybe we can look at how we're charging, and if a code enforcement officer has to visit a big remodel job multiple times, maybe it's more than just one fee.
Yeah. Remodel versus remodel. Yeah. Agreed. Okay. Going back to fire and rescue services, because Ralph is now here. 2024 budget was 145,743. 2025 initial is 151,045, which is an increase of a little bit more than $5,500, I believe. Comments? Carol?
I just have a question. Clearly, there's sort of been a change in the part-time wages versus stipend. So could you explain that? So just for everybody who's sitting in the audience, part-time wages have gone up to 21,000 when they weren't there before, and originally for last year, part-time wages were 74,028, and they're being proposed to go down to 52,750. Does that sound right?
And the net is about the same. Yes, the net is 74,028 versus 74,50. So it's a difference of $32.
So the change was, when we started out on the per diem, we upped everybody's pay to $25 an hour. So we didn't, back before we upped it, there were steps. So if you were a firefighter, you got 14 or whatever it was. And then if you had firefighter 1 and 2, you got an extra money. So that, we just reinstated that.
Okay.
That's really the biggest change.
But it's neutral to the budget. It's just the way, I mean, the difference between a stipend position and part-time wages. Is that showing up right in here?
Yeah, it's separate. Stipends are what you get in one year. Part-time wages is what you get per call.
So it looks like we didn't have stipend positions prior to next fiscal year. Is that right?
So stipends have historically always existed. It's just the way that the stipends were paid out were in the same line as wages, because it is a wage. to
So
the
so we're
employee.
changing the
It's
account.
it's just the way it gets tracked, so it's easier for the fire department to know X amount of dollars they have to distribute for the stipends versus what the hourly and part-time wages are.
Makes sense, okay.
Other questions from the board? Mark?
Small questions at first, Ralphie, so excuse me. Telephone line 2030 is up $900. Is that just because it is?
That's all the telephone lines, town office and.
Oh, I'm sorry, is that to replace that?
So the one that is, the $900 addition is the $25 a month reimbursement cell phone to the administrative assistant.
Gotcha, thank you.
Which was there, and then Steve was the administrative assistant.
Yeah.
Is
Is it okay if I read from this fire department budget report?
Yeah, it came right from the fire department, from the letter.
That's the association one.
So Lida has been, she can restock the ambulance with the meds and she's able to do that. You guys want to give her a yearly stipend of $1,000, and it says out of line 3140, doesn't it? That says membership dues.
That's correct, that's what the fire department is requesting, so that's
Okay.
why I put it in.
We'll take it out any way you want. It was just this year, that's why I did it. It was some extra. in
Yeah. My next question is, and I should remember this from having to test fire hose, but it says that you wanna, the department is gonna hire out the yearly mandatory fire hose testing. This will be an added expense of approximately $5,380 out of the equipment maintenance.
Yeah.
What's the, you just can't get people to show up and do it.
Yeah, it's too much to ask. I mean, it's to test all the hose. I mean, we have a little over 4,000 feet of 5-inch line, like 800 feet of 1.75 inches, 1,200 feet of 2.5. And it takes us, sometimes it takes us 2 days to do it. We
Yeah,
have done it with a big crew in one day, but it's like 10, 12 hours. And it's just too much.
and you will be able to find someone to do that.
We have a company already working with them. They're already set up to come over. And they're also, pretty much, this is what all the departments are doing now. Long Island is hiring the same company. They got a different company
Mhm.
and they stopped, coming out to Long Island, but this company's gonna do big and long.
Thank you. I'm on that.
Other questions from the board? Other comments from the chief? Right, thank you.
I have,
Oh, sorry, I think it's,
so since this has been printed, fire department has requested additional funds, which are not in here, so.
Yeah, so, I have initially asked $1,500 to replace the computer that I have that the town bought me in 2008. And I can't run any of the programs that they need to do the trainings now. It won't work. So we need to just update the computer.
And what I asked was a little bit more specifics on a laptop and what, so then we can go to our technology companies so they can give us a proper quote based on the fire department needs, so it's properly backed up and in line with, you know, everything else, so.
Initially, I had Matt Grosnickel, kind of a computer whiz, and he said he could get me a computer for $1,500 to do everything we needed to do. I'm not a computer whiz, but now Beacon wants us to do this, so I don't know. We'll work through it, we'll figure it out, but
there's an additional charge of something like 1,500, 1,000, 1,800, whatever it is, that needs to be added in here. And this is a laptop that you use for training?
yeah, for everything, yeah.
But I think I would suggest that it should go through ION. I have no doubt Matt's good with computers, but I'd like to keep the town all on ION if we can do that.
I do have one more question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's sort of not related to the budget, so go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Mark.
Neither is mine.
All right.
Well, mine has a little bit.
Just to be quick about it, I think one thing that would be helpful would be to get a fire chief email.
Yeah, that would go on.
That would be great to have an email that is fire chief town of Shabaka Island.
So is that separate from because we just got so the fire department line would be for the administrative assistant, and then we would want a separate line for the
Oh,
fire chief.
whatever you guys think. I just think having a fire department related email would be good.
There is one, and there is one, well, and I guess that's where the clarification that I would like, so we went through Ion, but the fire department computer was replaced last July, that was one of the funds in the current budget, the computer was replaced and what is it, fire department at Town of Shebig Island email was established, which I just found out they haven't been very good at using, which they're getting better at. But is that sufficient enough, or do you want one directly to the fire chief too?
That's up to you
Yeah,
guys to
Okay.
decide. I'll leave that to you.
Well, that does add the cost to the.
No, I guess when I was looking for a fire department email, there wasn't one at the time, so maybe there is one.
There is one now, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Mark, you have one more thing?
I'd like to wait a moment. My question is about the new 501c3. And I think Jeff helps run that, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's
He just
president. Yep.
I'd like to wait till he gets back if I could.
Okay, we'll come back to,
It's not a big question, don't worry.
yeah. Okay. Thanks, Ralph. Okay, so we did code enforcement, moving on, and we'll come back when Jeff comes back in the room to, the nonprofit aspect of things. Department 2500, Harbor Master and Shellfish. 2024 budget was 31,127. Proposed 25 budget is 31,951. That's an increase of about $800. And I believe it is solely based on the COLA that is in there for all employees this year. Any questions from the board on that budget? All right, moving back to the fire department once again, because the man of the hour had walked back into the room. Mark, what's your question?
My question is very simple, I think. Last year, of course, you guys know you were able to start your new 501c3. I don't know what you call it, fire and rescue. What's that?
Fire and rescue association.
Thank you. I was wondering if some point that it would be possible, or if you would be able to give us a report on how that's going and a financial statement and some goals of your department of usage of some of that. That's my question.
I think I can answer that if you want.
We can go there, I guess I'm not afraid to do any of that, I guess, if that's also required of all nonprofits on the island. I guess I don't want to be singled out, since we're new to this, as long as everybody else has to do that as well, I'd be more happy.
So it's a little bit different. Nonprofits that are on the island that ask the town for money have a very specific set of reporting that they give to us that we'll be discussing this coming Saturday. This is different because this particular nonprofit does not ask the town for money, but it's associated with the fire department that is part of the town's funding structure. And when the 501c3 was first contemplated and was brought to the select board, not for approval, but for information, I think there was a discussion at that time that we see some sort of annual update from the association as to how they were spending money, how it was going. Is the fund growing? Is the fund going down? Just something really basic. Nothing like what we ask the nonprofits for.
That's all I'm asking.
Okay, so our yearly voting is June, so that's kind of our fiscal year, officers and such, so we could roll it into that time frame.
That'd be great.
At the same point.
Yeah, it doesn't directly affect the funding conversation that we're having here.
No, that's not why I'm asking. I'm not asking because I'm resistant to requests of the department funding.
Right.
I'm asking because I'm interested in how it's going.
Oh, no, I'm really happy to do that, yeah.
Vika?
Maybe to clarify something, so in preparation of the budget, I did reach out to Ralph. And, in the notes from last year's budget discussion, it was asked of the board to provide just an update on where the nonprofit stands. And I think to maybe look at it from a different perspective, how is this nonprofit benefiting from taxpayers' funds increasing even more? So what you're doing is ultimately helping from coming to the town for more money. Is kind of my understanding from some of the things that Ralph has mentioned to me, so maybe, I mean, and he did say he was gonna give me a write-up, but I guess it never made it to my email, so I think there might be something.
So he, last week, I don't know if you got that.
Then it sounds like there is something, but I mean, Ralph, and you maybe can, there, you said that it's saving taxpayers X amount of dollars.
So, Joe, do you know how much money, we spent last year? Was
Around, well, the AEDs, the Jaws of Life, the Lucas device, it was over $40,000.
Yes. So, gentleman from G Valley's estate, that the stipulation was we had to become a 501c3, so we did. So all the money, we're trying to use, the idea is to use the money to offset the cost. So like the tax burden should be, we should. We're gonna try to roll a little bit of the interest in the principal and try to grow that every year. And we get donations over the course of the year. So right now we have $250,000 or something, I can't remember the numbers. But this year alone, we already saved the town over $40,000 in buying new gear. And this is nothing different than we've been doing for the last 60 years. We just have more money to work with. And just so everybody knows, the association is separate from the town. It has nothing to do with the township at all. It's nothing to do with the fire department or the rescue. It's the association. It's kind of a boosted club for the association. And its sole purpose is to lessen the financial burden of taxpayers. That's it.
And a big thank you to Jenny and to all the people who have contributed since the fund was
So
established.
my question was not meant to single out the 501c3.
Gotcha. Yep. Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, I don't think there's anything more to talk about in, fire and rescue. So we left off, we just finished up with Department 2500, Harbor Master and Shellfish. Moving on to Department 2600, Animal Control, 2024 budget was 4850. 2025 proposed is 4850, no change. Any questions? Okay, moving on to public services. The prior year budget, the 2024 budget was $201,588. The initial 2025 budget is $201,280, a decrease of $308. Questions from the board? Carol?
On the street signs, I guess, we've had this chronic problem with street signs. I noticed that there's $500 in the budget this coming fiscal year for street signs, and I guess, have we contemplated any more secure methodology for installing street signs? And, is the $500 enough? And I know I hope there's a street, I haven't been there, but there's a stop sign now at the top of Dennis Cove Road. Still there?
The $500 was just a number to put in, because that has been a topic of conversation, just kind of looking at range of numbers the last couple of years. As far as the equipment that Public Works has ordered in the past, they have ordered the most secure post to eliminate from it being easily taken off the base. But now what they're experiencing is people are just taking a saw and cutting it off, which is why we've had a couple of times they've had to go and physically remove it out of the ground. So I don't, other than,
Surveillance.
monitoring them and, finding exactly who the person is and prosecuting them, I don't know if there's much more that they can do as far as what they can install.
Thank you, Vika. Carol, to answer your question,
It answers my question. Yes.
I would just add to everybody out there, it is a waste of taxpayer money. If you're listening and you think it's money to take signs down, all you're doing is wasting money that could be spent on the taxpayers in better ways. So please stop. So moving back to the budget. Other questions regarding Department 3100? Mark?
Line item 4630 on page 12 is road material. Budgeted at $15,000 last year. We have used, it says $1,000 on the budget, but on the expenses report, we've used $3,300. My point is, I don't know why we should continue to budget 15,000 if we're gonna use 5,000. I'm proposing $12,000 for that one.
Okay. I think this is where we've had the conversation in the past of waiting till the end of the winter to determine what we spend and haul out. Is that correct? Or Vika, do you have an expectation as to how much?
Yeah, so I did sit down with the department, and they, didn't have any suggestions for increases, or cuts, but with the road materials, it is, one of the, line items that gets brought up every year, and they do anticipate waiting until, later in the season to order the road materials. And looking at the last couple of years, in 2022, it was in the 16,000. The year before it was 8,900. So, I would feel more comfortable keeping it, but if the board wants to cut it, then I will be happy to make those adjustments.
Other thoughts from the board? Carol, David?
The average is $12,500.
We can always revisit it. For the time being, I could support a reduction there.
All right, 12,000?
Yeah, I think that-
12,000, and maybe if they go ahead and get the order before we finish budgeting, we can revisit it?
Yeah, just put an asterisk on it to revisit it if we have to before our final decisions.
Yes, Carol?
And then I just want to be sure the difference between 4630 road materials and 4640 winter road materials. What are those? How do you distinguish those budgetarily?
May I?
Yeah, Mark.
Vika can.
I'm sorry.
Somebody.
With the winter road materials, a lot of the stuff that we charge that is going to be, stuff that would be used in the winter time as far as mixing
Sand.
for, sand and
Sounds all.
whatever the stuff they get some kind of stuff that they mix with the sand.
Calcium.
With the road materials, it's more of, the materials that they purchase to do a lot of the grading on the dirt roads in the springtime, which is why they tend to wait a little bit closer to order the material, gauging on, how severely damaged the roads are from the winter, to better have an understanding of what and how much material they will need to finish off what they had and then to be able to, plan ahead.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll change that to 12K, updated.
No, I was just wondering, are these line items, for example, the storm damage that we got, that's associated with the roads. I know we've got some other funding coming for that, but is that affected? Are these lines?
So very minimal storm damage repair has actually been done. If we, so for example, if we say, go down to this road and do some of the repair, yes, it would come out of this line item.
Mhm.
But as far as what has been used so far is material that we have right now that hasn't been specifically bought.
I think, David, it might make sense to address some of the items you're talking about, which I assume would be like East Shore Drive and South Shore Drive in the capital budget.
Oh, yeah, those are separate events. I was just wondering if there's any impact on our day-to-day budget, if you will.
Okay. Yeah.
No
Mark,
decisions have been made at this point by the board to proceed to do any additional, so no, at this point.
Thank you.
and Mark, did you have something else?
Yeah, my next one is, line item 5,000, contract services budgeted at $3,000. Sorry, budgeted at $5,000. Yet we have not used hardly any of that in the last couple of years. Year to date, we've used $189, and we've used less than $200. I'm proposing knocking it down from 5,000 to 3,000.
Okay, any comments on that, Vika?
This is the line item that Public Works would use if they don't feel that they can, do the job or they need some assistance, so.
Other thoughts on the board on Mark's suggestion? David? Down to 3K, okay.
Fine.
Anything else from the board on Department 3100?
If I may,
Yes, Mark.
line item 5020, bottom of that page, is budgeted at $16,000. That's barging for materials, trucks being brought back and forth, basic activity that benefits Public Works, Public Services Department only. Yet we're only using a portion of that. I'm proposing knocking that barging line down to 12,000.
Carol?
No, I mean, looking at the prior years, we have 19,016, 279, so I guess I wouldn't be inclined to reduce it. I think, again, we haven't seen the spring barging show up in those costs. So I'm not in favor of that.
David?
I would agree and ask if that's the reason why it's only 5,800 so far. Is there a lot more spring barging coming?
Correct.
That's fine. I'm not sure those numbers were applied correctly. I think there was some material mixed into those numbers, but that's fine. My last one is, last page 13, line of 6010, which is tools, budgeted at $2,500, yet there's been hardly any use in the last couple of years. I would allow 1,500 for that instead of 2,500.
Carol's nodding, David? Yeah. You got any comment? 1,500 on that one.
Thank you.
That's all for this. Anybody? Yes, Carol?
And I guess if, Public Works has some response to these suggestions and they can make specific recommendations about why they need to, readjust the amounts, that's fine, but they need to be specific.
Moving on then to Department 3200 Solid Waste. 2024 budget was 211,443. Proposed budget is 241,802, which is an increase of about $30,400. And a good bit of that is the increase in eco-main pricing. Comments from the board, questions?
The biannual landfill monitoring is due this year, which is why it's a big jump in that, because it's every other year.
Yep. Okay, Carol?
Yeah, and my recollection is that we might not have to do it this year, and I will check with them because I thought we were moving to a longer time frame. But I'll find out.
That'd be great, because I looked at the notes from the last time and I didn't see anything as far as change, so I just went with what.
Right, but I think Dave was the person they communicated with, but I'll find out. I think it would be nice if we don't have to spend that money. And then I just wanted to confirm that the hauling cost, which would be the cost for Eco-Main, includes the increased cost. So it's basically $95,000 projected for 2025.
Yeah, so the transfer station, the memo that I had in with, did you see the memos?
Yes, I didn't,
Yeah.
maybe I missed it.
It's one of these.
So with all of the department things, there were memos, that I had typed up. And it's with the bargaining memo, I tried putting as much information as I possibly can. And so what I did is I broke out what was spent in fiscal year 23, for each, service that we use. So Briano is the company we rent the boxes from. Eagle Main is who we use for recycling and household trash. And provided what that amount was, took the difference of what the last couple of years increase has been for usage. And then, incorporated that anticipated adjusted increase for this year, and then the added cost on top of that, excuse me. And so the memo does have, a breakout of all that. And so with the combined of all that, the cost was 95,750, and so I rounded up in the 95. But what this is added the increased expenses, but then, like I said, increase from last year to this year was 10% in the household trash. It was 30% used from last year, from one year to the next year for recycling. And so I anticipated a 15% increase because 30 was just, and so this number is definitely on the high end with those adjusted rate increases, but also with the assumption that increase from the current year to the next year is going to go up by 10%. So it's definitely on the high end.
But overall, the budget is going up
Yes.
14%.
My questions are very simple. First one's a really small math question. On line item 2030 telephone, if you look over under 2024 budget, it says $580.
Yeah.
And then it says $300 added for cell phone, which is 12 months times $25, which is our policy. But then the total is $940. Shouldn't it be $880? 580 plus 300? Yes, just a,
Yeah.
sorry. And then my question, if I may, Bob, is 5130 hazardous waste. I understand that we have taken some years off from accepting hazardous waste. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. So we've decided to continue that activity proposed for next year at the rate of $6,000 here. And I guess my question is that hazardous waste accepted at the town garage or at the transfer station, or what's the actual activity?
So the hazardous waste weekend, we don't anticipate having. We do have, and this is in all honesty, a line item that I didn't change and could have probably looked into more. That we do take on certain hazardous waste every year, but the hazardous waste weekend is what has been agreed upon not to do. In the ordinance, it does say that the town may do it every couple of years or every other year. So last year or the year before, the ordinance was changed to allow the town the discretion to do it. But Jeff has been going to some training classes and he has learned a lot about that. So he might be able to weigh in about that, could shed some light as to why the public service department has not been as comfortable with
That's
it.
okay, you don't have to answer that question. My question really is, we feel that it's important to offer the hazardous waste, and this is a good amount. That's my real question.
I guess the biggest thing according to the DEP is, unless we have a hazardous waste licensed person to receive it, we should not be accepting it. Period. There are avenues for people to discard of their hazardous waste. Paint being one of them. They have a contract with the state, Main Paint Service and Johnson's Paint. You pay 70 cents a gallon for every paint can you buy in the store. That goes to mainpaintcare.org. They are licensed and required to take those paint back, not the town of Shaniki. I'm currently working with them. Once I hit 100 gallons, they will come take it off for free. So that's not going to affect us. But we'll still be stuck with 110 gallons and 55 gallon drums at Public Works that needs to be gotten rid of.
Okay.
That Main Paint here will not take because they don't take 55 gallon drums.
So we should be budgeting and allowing for this.
In order to get rid of the hazardous waste that's at the Public Works, definitely should, because we should not be a storage facility for hazardous waste. We should be a transfer facility.
But it's possible that $6,000 that we need to keep in fiscal year 2025 might be less dramatically in fiscal year 2026, for example.
So,
Okay, Carol.
I guess I'm still confused that the amount, the $6,000 hazardous waste line, is this the cost of disposal from Public Works for the hazardous waste that they collect, or is this the one weekend a year when the town accepts it at the transfer station?
so the hazardous waste that Public Works collects is the hazardous waste weekend. What they collect, now, they're able to collect some of, I think it's fuel that they can use in their furnace or something like that.
Yeah, I just mean, I don't understand what this line item represents.
So it would be for getting rid of the
What we have.
computers, TVs, the refrigerators and sealants that are there. That fee would be to pay the hazardous waste hauler and whatever fees we have to pay for them to get rid of all the refrigerators on the side of the building.
Okay, so this is specific to the transfer station. This does not cover what Public Works is doing?
It does.
There, it's
It's
interchangeable.
combined, it's combined, because what they do, we don't budget under the public, under the, whatever their budget is, under 3,100, it gets budgeted under this.
Yeah, and I guess given Jeff's comment, I think the practice of the town accepting paint waste from contractors is not a good idea, period. So I think we should maybe button up our general waste disposal practices, but at the same time, so that people don't throw it in the regular trash, then I think we need to have an annual hazardous waste day. I don't know what you think, Jeff, but that's my sense. It's like you can't, I don't think the town should be accepting hazardous waste at the public safety building or the Public Works building, but at the same time, then we have to have a mechanism for people to get rid of it.
Well, and as far as a bigger topic, and now we'll go past it. I know back in the fall, we talked about having a workshop about the transfer station. And this would be a topic for that workshop, not for this budget cycle, but going forward for the next budget cycle next year. I think a workshop would be highly needed.
And I guess I would be an advocate for having a hazardous waste pickup day on Shabig in fiscal year 25. Because I don't think we did it last year. Am I right about that?
Correct, but I think you're straying from the budget. I think we should,
Well, so is that cost included?
I think what we've all concluded is that we have some catching up to do on hazardous waste, getting rid of hazardous waste that's already here. I think we've concluded that we don't yet know if we're gonna have a hazardous waste day, but we should leave that 6,000 in the budget.
That was my question. I was
That's
trying to keep it simple, so.
where I mean, it just, so we've sat down and we've talked and we
This
just,
is getting rid of the stuff we currently have.
Yeah, that's
Gotcha.
different.
So if you're suggesting that we add money so that we can have a hazardous waste day, which is gonna cost money because we have to bring in a trained and certified professional to man the station when we're doing it, can we have a hazardous waste day this year and still
Yeah.
operate under the $6,000 budget, or do we need to add money if we want to have a hazardous waste day?
Exactly.
I think that's a hard question to answer because we don't know what the cost is of having a professional be brought in.
So I guess that's my question. Can you please provide us with an estimate for what it would take to have a hazardous waste? I think it's usually a day or a weekend. And also, you should be able to get an estimate for what it would take to dispose of the pre-existing drums that we have. So let's try to get a better handle on our hazardous waste situation so we can budget appropriately. That's.
Did we have hazardous waste days in 2022 and 2023?
No.
No.
We
So
We have had a hazardous day since I had stepped into the town administrator position, but I would have to look back and.
I believe it was not last year, the prior year, pretty sure.
That's pretty funny.
22, but not.
Yeah.
Well, I have one more quick question. It does relate to budget. It relates to the hauling charge. And it's a technical question, but I hope it won't open up another can of worms.
I won't ask any questions.
With the municipal solid waste disposal at our system, which is, part of the hauling, is there an allowance for people that are commercial to dispose of items in that garbage compactor with a fee attached? In other words, is there revenue coming back if a commercial entity or person disposes of something into the garbage compactor?
Yes.
So yes, it's the way the ordinance is written, it's $2 per bag or $6 per barrel. So Christopher just comes up and throws in a bag of trash. He's a commercial entity. He pays $2.
Okay,
Now, can I ask people and open and inspect the bags? Is that, when you got in there, your house cleaner, is that your trash? Is that somebody else's trash? It's a gray area, so you can only do what you can do. But yeah, I try to assess those fees to those individuals.
And signage would help. Signage would help people, give people the opportunity to do the right thing.
and I'll be quick. I have a boat shrink wrap that I'm gonna be taking off my boat for the first time because I had it shrink wrap. If I bring that up to the transfer station, where does that go and is there a charge for that?
That's one of my big questions for the workshop.
Thank you. Oh,
Okay. Other questions on solid waste? Carol?
Not really a question, but I think given the increase, it's really the largest, the most expensive department we have. I think we should, with Jeff and the workshop, review our fees and potentially think about changing some of the charges or how we operate. I think we should try to recover some of these costs and not put them on the taxpayer.
And that is in the memo was, a suggestion.
And I guess I apologize. I did not get the memo because I downloaded this from the
I don't think I
website.
do either.
The memo is
I'm
already.
surprised I wouldn't.
They weren't in the copy I got off the website.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's here.
moving on then from solid waste, but if you could email those memos to the people who don't get printed.
Yeah, I didn't get them.
They're all in the OneDrive, but yes, I will, I'll also email all that.
Moving on then to Department 4400, mainland, annual payment to Yarmouth toward the Cousins Repair Reserve. 2024 budget, 23,897, 2025 initial, 24,853. That's a contractual increase of 4% every year. That same thing happens. Any question on that? All right. Contributions, we'll be talking about, this week on Saturday. General assistance, 5810. Thanks, Jeff. Didn't see him leave until he was gone. 2024 budget, 500, 2025 initial 500, no change. Any questions? Health services, Department 5910, 2024, 2000, 2025, 2000, no change. Any questions? No. Cemetery, Department 6200, 2024, 13900, 2025, 13900, no change. Questions? No? And debt service, Department 6900. 2024, 438,588, 2025, 459,205. That's an increase of $20,500. Questions from the board? I had one point I wanted to confirm. I believe item 6520 MMB broadband interest and 6521 MMB broadband principal. Those are placeholders, but that money comes back to us over time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That is correct.
We have to bond it, but then it comes back.
Yes, so last year and this year, the money won't start coming back until Axiom starts collecting.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep. Okay. Other questions on debt service? Seeing none, Department 7500, benefits and insurance, 2024 budget, 194,391, 2025 initial, 204,391. That is an increase of $10,000. And it is all in the area of pay raises, bonus pay to town employees, line item 1015. Questions from the board? Mark?
Line item 3060 on the bottom of this page, which is liability insurance.
Yeah.
You're budgeting the same amount, which was 22,542, but it's showing year to date $34,804 paid.
A journal entry needs to be done to make that correction. Some of it needs to go to the school.
So this isn't accurate.
Correct.
Thank you. My next, sorry, Carol. I had one more question. Oh, health and life insurance, and this is just a technical staff question. One of the newest employees has chosen not to take health insurance under, is that correct?
Correct.
And given that, wouldn't there possibly be a small possibility of savings in this budgeted amount?
No, because we have the same amount of employees as we did in the previous year.
Okay,
So if anything, it would be an increase if if an added employee chose to take on. But it's
okay.
the same number of employees plus one without the added.
So we didn't. I think I'm understanding that.
I had the same question, so.
Sorry, thank you. I may be confused.
Carol, do you have a question?
Well, I had sort of the same question, and I'm not sure I totally understand the answer, but I guess the bonuses to town employees that existed for 22 and 23, then we took it out of the budget in 24. I think what I would want to understand before I can support the addition is how that, how you would evaluate the employees to. And so I don't think that's part of the budget discussion, but I'm just saying that to me would be a criteria is how would you evaluate the allocation of those bonuses?
And I agree.
Okay, so that's all I
You
needed
can
to say.
Maybe decide whether that needs to be an executive session conversation or whether there's a memo you could write to the board that explains it or how best to explain that.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be an executive session.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's a
Yeah,
budget
because
thing.
I mean, yeah.
Okay. All right. Other questions on Department 7500, Mark?
In the line item 1280, the workman's comp insurance, the reason that's so low expended so far is just a payment schedule.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right. That is. All right. School debt and contingency. I don't think we'll be talking about that tonight. School, we won't be talking about tonight. Got the page all the way down.
Page 31.
I guess, Vika, though, just before we leave the school, are these numbers correct? Are they reflective of their proposed budget for 2025?
No,
Okay,
so what it is previous year's
right,
numbers.
so it's not their budget,
Yeah.
okay.
Um,
And when do you think you'll have that?
So the schedule is to have one is the joint meeting. The joint meeting is on the 9th of April. So I anticipate that I would have it prior to that, so I could include it.
Okay,
The last 2 years that I've done this, it didn't come to me much sooner than that. So
good. Department 8100 streetlights, is that streetlights as part of the school or is that
yeah,
streetlights?
that's us.
Town, okay. Streetlights, 2024, 8400, 2025, same number, 8400. Any questions on that?
No, I mean, some people hate street lights and I don't really have an opinion on it. It used to be 12 or 13. It's down to 8,400 because of the changeover to LED.
Contingency, Department 8300, 2024 budget was 14,000, 2025 initial is 20,000. Carol's okay with that. David, Mark, any comments? Yes, Mark.
I think 20,000 is too much. I think we could get by with about 16,000. That's my opinion.
Anybody else?
I don't know. I think we may have some unexpected expenses coming not next year.
So you would leave it or you?
Yeah, I'm tempted. I hear what you're saying, Mark, but I'm afraid that may not be in the cards. I think I'd like to leave it.
Carol, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to leave it. I think it's a pretty small, when you think about the percentage of the budget overall, it's pretty small. And if we don't spend it, it goes back into the undesignated fund.
I would leave it as well. Okay, Department 8800, tax paid to Cumberland. 24 budget was 48,048. 2025 initial is 56,932. This is the outer island tax paid to Cumberland. This is our whole island thing, is that correct?
Yeah.
So it's
Outer,
all the outer islands, and what we do is I just, in Trio, pull up what the taxes are for outer islands and divide it by 4, and then 2 payments, 2 installments go to Cumberland County.
Yep.
So yes, because Long Island's assessment has gone up a bit.
Hope.
Oh, wow, I said long.
Whole island, sorry. I mean, they're saying, that our payment had to increase, but it's because we're collecting more tax.
Right.
But isn't part of that because Jackie figured out that there's
Yes.
electrical line that we needed to be, so kudos to her for
Yes.
giving us. the-
Yes, yeah.
that's right.
Yep. All right, Department 8900 county tax, 2024 was 216,527. 2025 initial is 216,527. I believe that's because we don't yet know what the number will be. Is that correct, Lisa?
Yeah, have not received that letter from them yet.
And I'm sorry again, what is this based on? What do they base this tax on?
So it's the Cumberland County, it's the assessed evaluation, and the reason it went up, last year is because Cumberland County switched their fiscal years, and so we agreed to pay, half a year over the next 6 years, so it's a little bit higher.
Thank you.
Okay, and the next item is capital improvements, which we'll be talking about on Saturday. And then Department 1300 below that, revenue. Is that something we talk about tonight as part of department budgets? What's the deal?
And if you want.
Yeah, well,
changes.
we're okay time wise, it's 8:20.
Can I make just a quick comment
Yes,
before we get
please.
to it? So, if you're looking at the, capital and the revenue with the capital, I did add some kind of preliminary numbers based on fire department and a couple other things. So there are some numbers in there, as far as the revenue, from what I've been taught and from what I've done the last 2 years, the revenue, it's gonna be a little bit later in the season when I will put in recommendations for the revenue, because I'll look at the year to date more closer to the end of the year. So those numbers just simply exist, from previous year for the most part, unless I know what that number is already going to be or haven't anticipated, adjusted.
Yeah, yeah. And I did have some comments on capital, actually. So in the interest of talking about where we are, without going into the revenue, but just stopping at expenses, including capital, just a couple of questions on capital. You did building facilities at 40 versus last year of 20, and new town office at 10 versus last year of 10. New town office, is that the new public safety building, or is that more?
So with the definition description, building facilities is the renovation and improvement to town-owned buildings to include town garage, sand shed, transfer station, and public safety.
Okay.
And the reason that I doubled that was in reference to my memo in the transfer station, just making recommendation about potentially putting some money aside for improvements. Once again, just put a number in there for kind of a starting point of a discussion. The town office is a reserve fund to build a new town office and or renovate the existing one. So that's the difference. And with that one, it's been 10,000 over the last couple of years, so I just left it at that.
Thank you. Those are the only 2 questions I had. Other than pointing out that this pre-conversation take on the capital budget shows a decrease of right at 84, right at $100,000, $90,000. And then if you total up all the expenses, including that big decrease in capital, what we're looking at is a 1.33% increase in the budget before the changes that were made tonight, which were mostly coming down. But the capital discussion has not happened yet. So that 1.33 is potentially misleading, assuming we're going to be funding some capital things more largely than they are funded here.
Or the school.
School.
And the school is not, the school's in there at flat, and we don't yet know what the school budget's gonna look like, which is a little more than half of the total, is that correct? Yeah. Yeah. So that's just a real early snapshot of where we are. We don't yet know where we are on the undesignated fund balance, and we can talk about revenues and fees and such.
Could I summarize yours in a little bit more of a numbers?
Sure. Go ahead.
So before we came here tonight, I went through every division. I marked what the status was, either increase, the same, or decrease. And my number was $118,000, $714 increase before we started tonight. Capital is right now, without touching it, we certainly will on Saturday, down about 88,500. That leaves a increase right now of $30,214 just in operations. I'm not saying anything about capital. The reason I included the capital number in there is because you're right. That's about a 1.5, 1.3. Yeah, that's where we are as we go into it on Saturday. And, you know, as we all know, the capital plan is where some numbers can really go quickly. I spoke quickly to Elizabeth Dowdy, the chair of the school committee today. They don't have a sense yet of where their budget's quite going. She encouraged me to consider possibly coming to the next school meeting where they may have some more substance to talk about, and they're hoping to be ready a little earlier this year, but she's not sure yet.
Okay.
Thank you.
David, did you have your hand up a second ago? No? Okay. Do we want to discuss revenues tonight? It's 8:25. I see one head shake.
No, I don't think it's important at this stage, because you said they're not really.
Yeah.
I guess, and I'd like to see the memos that I didn't see
Yep.
before we, spend too much.
I can just make one quick comment.
Yes, please speak.
The one thing, going into the capital discussion, keep in mind that, there might be some money from the dredging reserve that could be moved elsewhere, right?
Yep.
So I still don't know those numbers, and hopefully will happen sooner than later, but
I would say the same thing about the Indian Point retaining wall. Yes, Carol.
And I would, the grant application I just completed, which was an infrastructure grant, which the governor's now putting another 50 million into. The construction part of that, I just think it's important for the board to understand, they were, giving away 150,000, but you had to match either a third or 2/3. So I think one of the things we need to think about is starting to beef up, in particular with the stone more fund, so that we will be in a position to accept potentially a grant where we have to match a substantial portion, because right now we really don't have enough money. Say we have a $500,000 project, we wouldn't probably, we'd have to have a special town meeting to kind of come up with the money. So I think that's one
The
thing.
match money, yeah.
I think when we think about that, we've got to think about even, matching. And then the other thing is, I do think maybe this Saturday when we're on capital, are we thinking about a congressionally directed spending request for this upcoming fiscal year? And if so, what are we going to ask for and when are we going to do it? And I think that should be part of the discussion. And one thing that it's not part of the town budget, but I think we've received substantial amount of money in grants. And I think somehow accounting for that and showing that the town has been pretty proactive about pursuing grants would be valuable for the taxpayers to know. So maybe finding a way to track both on the town and the school side, kind of the
Grants
grant
received, yeah.
situation.
Yeah, that'd be a good point of information. All right, thank you for all of that on the budget. Thanks for the suggestions. Fund process. Next item is items we placed on a future agenda. I've got, the 1st of March, we have to finalize and sign Eco Main contracts. I've got, Coastal Water and Select Board talking about a grant for the stone pier. I don't know what that means now. And I've got fees and solid waste workshop as items for the future agenda items. Carol?
Well, that ethics thing that I put together a while
Yeah.
back is still outstanding and, I
Well-
just don't know if we want to finalize that or.
Well, I just got the Word document 2 days ago. that's
I know,
editable.
I sent it to you originally.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You had sent it to me originally. Didn't know I had. But, yeah.
But
I'm
I
gonna,
mean, I think it's not urgent, but I think,
well, I think it's a good time to get it out to all the boards.
and after tonight's discussion and given the cost, I think that we should set a date for a solid waste workshop. I think we need to do it.
Mhm. Should it be a summer thing?
No, I think we need to do it this budget season because it's a big chunk of change and I think we should explore how we're gonna recover some costs. Personally, that's me. I'm not sure how the rest of the board feels.
I agree, Bob, if I may. Yes. And that was the purpose of my question to Jeff, about the, garbage compactor. I've seen some material go in there that I think should be paid for.
Mhm. Yes, and on that front, he's not here, but I would just like to say publicly, thanks to Jeff for all that he's done just in the short time that he's been there sprucing the place up.
Outstanding.
It looks really nice, and it's just a sign that there are things we can do. In addition to spending money, there are things we can do.
Yeah, and if I may quickly, I don't wanna harp, but, I'm not going to be too thrilled to bring a budget to the town voters that has a big increase along with it. And I don't wanna use a number, but, 4 or 5% to me is a big increase to bring to the voters. I'm just letting you know that I can get a little more difficult as the process goes along.
Other items to be added to future agendas. One thing. Michael.
Okay, coming up, and really it's, I guess it'll come from the facilities committee, but you're gonna be asked to approve the site plan for the, includes the central office for the broadband, but also all the rest of it, all that.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, it's probably sooner rather than later, because the money coming.
Yep.
The board is gonna approve that?
Planning board.
The planning board will need to approve the site plan.
Right, not this, not,
This board
okay,
does not need to approve that.
okay.
Okay.
This board needs to approve the contract, and that attachment is part of the contract, but we're not empowered to approve site plans.
No, I understand that, as long as you're happy with all the concepts, the underlying concepts of powering, you open up.
I'm gonna get free internet. I think it's great. Can't wait. Thanks, Michael.
How's it gonna be free?
I'm gonna live in that tunnel. Beacon, do you have items for the agenda? Add to the agenda list?
Nope, the only thing that I will mention is, more in line with the budget for Saturday. Tomorrow, I'll clean what was done today, add any of the contribution things. And then by the end of the day, we'll send that out, so you'll have an updated one of these to look at, with potentially any adjustments in mind for those discussions. There is also in the OneDrive, under the budget folder, folders for all of the contribution stuff that has been, which I think Chris emailed to all of you. So if you do want paper copy, let us know.
And did we get everything we asked for? Did everybody submit completely what we had requested?
I wouldn't say completely. I think it's a step in the right direction, but I've gotten through 2 of the folders so far,
I
and
haven't even had a chance to
Yeah.
go through.
Well, and of course, we did say if they were asking, and they had to go over a certain threshold to even have to
Yeah.
submit, right?
yeah.
But either way, that information is in the folder. If you want paper copies, please let us know. Otherwise, I'll email this out to you by the end of the day tomorrow.
And I heard the rec wanted to go early because they've got an event on Saturday morning, which is the Polar Plunge.
Yeah.
Have anybody else asked for a specific timing?
No,
I'd be happy to have the rec go first if that helps them with the, I think it's a fundraising event. the Polar Plunge.
And just very quickly, Bob, I'm not gonna ask for this to be on the agenda at the next meeting or even maybe the meeting after that, but I will get back to the land swap issue with the Grinnell family.
Yep.
I did reach out to, Jay Clausen and Bo by, email. I have not had a response from either one of them, so I'm going to have to look them up. Try to have a conversation and report that back to the board at some point.
That item is still on the list.
So I will not let that fall through the cracks.
Thank you. Pam?
PFAS update.
Okay.
So what's happening with the school water? Do we know if our road materials contain PFAS? What's the source of the PFAS contamination at the rec center and the school, along those lines?
Okay.
Are they testing up there now
For
for those chemicals?
this treatment on the school system.
Okay. Sure.
Just one question, I hate to, on the nonprofit program for Saturday, if we don't have everything we need, is who's gonna follow up to try to get the information for the meeting? Anybody? In other words, if we haven't received everything we've requested, are we gonna ask those entities to provide it, or what are we doing?
Haven't thought about it. I would assume if they haven't given us all the information, that doesn't speak well for what they're asking for.
Don't fund them.
Okay, because I haven't really looked at it yet. You said there's like 400.
There is a lot of information and I haven't.
And are you, I
They're
guess,
not single space pages. There's small amounts of information on a lot of those pages.
right,
Yeah.
so are you printing out copies for everybody, or what are you doing? Just so I understand.
So, well, and that's what, so all of this information is in the OneDrive under budget. There are there's fiscal year 25 budget in there. There is a folder for each nonprofit. So you click into it and it has all this information that they presented. If you want a paper copy, let me know. And I will, this is how big the stack is, because this is everything that was received. We will print it out for you. So if you wanna come into the town office and look at this before deciding, but it's in there.
Yeah.
And what I'll do tomorrow is I'll update, the budget information. I will put it in that same folder, but I will email you with just that PDF, letting you know of the updated, but all of this is already in that folder.
Okay.
I hate to ask you to print that out, so I'm not going to.
Do you come into the office
Just
tomorrow?
realize that Bob's read it all.
Well, no, Mark, if you wanna step in the office, or, I mean, if you wanna borrow it right now for some bedtime reading tonight, you can do that.
Well, I think it will be important to even have it on Saturday so that we can, you can look at it.
And I will, and that's the thing, I have with my budget folder, that's why I have all of the paper copies. But I'm not gonna print this all out.
No, that's why I'm
Specifically
asking. That's why I was asking.
Entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So,
Moved by Mark, seconded by Carol, all in favor. At,
No, we, just so I'm clear, we have a meeting Saturday, the 24th. When's our next meeting after that? Is it not?
Wednesday, the 28th.
yeah,
We do have a meeting Wednesday.
and don't.
Another
that was 10 to